Chapter 1. Ship on the Rocks. It was the 7th day of the storm. We didn't know where we were. Everyone on the ship believed that death was very near. My wife and my 4 young sons moved close to me. "My dear children," I said, "I don't think we're going to die." Then, above the noise of the storm, I heard a cry, "Land! Land!" The ship hit the rocks. We heard someone shout, "There's no hope now! Let down the boats!" "No hope," cried the children. "Be brave, my boys," I said. "The land isn't far away. We'll save ourselves. We'll find a way. I'll see what we can do." I left our room and looked around, but there were no sailors on the ship. They were all in boats on the sea. We were alone. I returned to my family. "It's all right," I said. "The front part of the ship is between 2 rocks, so it's above the water. Tomorrow the sea will be calmer, and we'll be able to reach the land." The children immediately became happier, but my wife understood the danger of our position. She prepared a meal and the boys went to bed, but my wife and I stayed awake and watched. The next day it was not as windy and the sky was clear. We could see that we were near land. "Now," I said, "let's go around the ship. Let's look for things that will help us reach the land. We need food and water, too. Then we'll meet again here." Fritz, my oldest boy, brought back guns and gunpowder. My second son, Ernest, found a box of tools, a lot of nails, a big knife, some small knives, and some other things. The box was very heavy, but Fritz helped him with it. When my third son, Jack, opened the door to one of the rooms, 2 big dogs jumped out at him. They were quite friendly, and he brought them with him. Then my wife came with Franz, our youngest son. "Good news," she said. "A donkey, 2 goats, a pig, 6 sheep, and some chickens are still alive." I said, "Those will all be useful, but not the dogs. They'll eat too much." "But father," said Jack, "they'll help us to catch animals for food when we reach the land." "Yes," I said, "but we haven't reached it yet. We need to make a boat. Let's get some barrels and some pieces of wood." So we started to work and we made a boat. We used one of the pieces of wood to hold the sail. At last, everything was ready, and we lowered the boat into the sea. It was too late to leave the ship that night, so I tied one end of a long rope to our boat and the other end to the ship. Then we had a meal and went to bed. Chapter 2. The Island. We all woke up early the next morning. I called the children together and said, "First, we must feed the animals. I hope we'll be able to come back for them later. Then let's take everything that will be useful to us." We took guns and gunpowder and bags of food. We took some cooking pots, the tools, nails, and knives. We brought sailcloth to make a tent. The chickens seemed sad, so we brought them too. "The dogs," I said, "can swim behind the boat." At the last minute, my wife came carrying a big bag. I didn't ask her what was in it. At first, the boat turned round and round, but after a time, I learned to sail it. "Look!" cried Fritz as we came nearer the land. "Those are coconuts. We'll have coconuts to eat." The dogs were swimming towards calmer water. "They know the best place to land," I said. I'll follow them." 3 of the boys jumped onto the beach. Then they helped Franz to follow them. We took everything out of the boat and freed the chickens. Then I cut some wood from the trees, put it in the ground, and made a tent from the sailcloth. "Now," I said to the children, "go and bring some dry grass for our beds." While they were doing this, I found some big stones for a fireplace. I soon made a good fire using dry wood from the beach. My wife got a pot of water from the river and put it on the fire. Then, helped by little Franz, she began to cook a meal. Fritz took a gun to the other side of the river. Ernest went to the right along the beach, and Jack went to the left. Suddenly I heard Jack shouting. I took a gun and ran to help him. I found him standing in water up to his knees. "Come here, father," he shouted. "Come quickly. I've caught something really big." "All right," I said. "Bring it here." "I can't. It's caught me." I laughed. Then I hit the large shellfish with my gun and freed Jack. It was only holding on to his clothing, so he wasn't hurt. "Well, Jack," I said, "you've caught our first fresh food." Just then, Ernest came. "I found some things that are good to eat too, but I need help to get them." "What are they?" "They're shellfish too, but I can't get them off the rocks." "We'll take them later, after our meal." "The food's ready," said my wife, "but we should wait for Fritz." She looked at her pot. "How shall we eat it? We can't eat soup with a knife. We need spoons, but we haven't got any." "We can cut coconuts in half and use them." "We can, but we haven't got any coconuts," I said. "There are shells on the rocks," said Ernest. "We can use them if you help me." Fritz arrived, so the boys all went to get the shellfish. When they came back, Jack tried to open one with a knife. "I can't do it," he said. "I can't open it." "Put them near the hot fire," I said, "and they'll open without your help." So we sat down to our meal. We ate the shellfish first, and then we used the shells as spoons for the soup. "But we haven't got any plates," said my wife. "I've got a plate," said Ernest, showing her a very big shell. "I found it on the beach. There are lots of these shells near the place where I found this one." "Then why?" I asked. "Didn't you bring plates for all of us?" The sun was going down when we finished our meal. Then my wife opened her bag from the ship and began to throw corn to the chickens. I stopped her. "I'm very glad that you've brought this, but we mustn't give it to the chickens. We must plant it. Then when it grows, we can make bread. The chickens can have other food." It was time for everyone to go to bed. We took our guns with us into the tent. Chapter 3. The Baby Monkey. We woke up very early the next day. "First," I said, "we must see if any of the sailors from the ship have reached land." "We don't all need to go," said my wife. "You take Fritz. I'll stay here with the other boys." "Yes," I answered. "I'll take Turk with us, and Flora can stay with you." Those were the names of our dogs. My wife gave us bags of food to take with us. We walked along the beach, looking in the sand for signs of other people, but we didn't find any. Fritz had a gun with him. "Shall I use the gun?" he asked. "If they're near, they'll hear it." "No," I said. If there are wild men on the island, they will hear it too. We don't want them to know we're here." We turned away from the beach and walked for about a mile. We came to a little wood. At every step we saw a new and beautiful plant. "What's this strange plant?" asked Fritz, "with these big things growing on it?" "Ah," I said, "those are gourds. They're very useful." We took some of the gourds and cut them open. Now we must take out the soft part inside. We'll leave the shells to dry in the sun. Then we can make spoons and plates and cooking pots from them. That's why these plants are so useful. I don't understand how you can make a cooking pot from this. If you put it on the fire, it'll burn. "Ah," I said, "but you don't put it on the fire. You fill it with water. Then you put hot stones into the water and the water will boil." We cut plates, spoons, and pots from the gourds and put them in the sun. We left signs to ourselves around the place so we could find it again later. We walked to a field of very tall grass. It was growing high above our heads. Now, where, I thought, have I seen grass like this? We had to cut our way through the grass. As I touched it, my hands became very wet. I put a hand to my mouth. Then I remembered. "Come here, Fritz. Cut one of these open and put the soft part in your mouth." He did that. "Oh," he said, "it's sweet like sugar." "It is sugar," I answered. "Let's take some back with us. The others will be very pleased and surprised." Next, we came to some coconut trees. As we moved nearer, we saw a lot of monkeys on the ground near the trees. But when they saw us, they ran up into the trees. They made angry noises at us. Fritz lifted his gun. "Stop!" I cried. "Why do you want to kill those monkeys?" "Because they're screaming at us. They're terrible, useless things." "Or perhaps they're laughing at you." "Why are you getting so angry?" "Because they're laughing at you. They're right to laugh at an angry boy. And they aren't useless." "How can you make a monkey useful?" Fritz asked. I threw some stones at the monkeys in the trees, and the monkeys threw coconuts down at us. "There," I said, "an angry monkey can be quite useful." "More useful than an angry boy," said Fritz. "But I'm not angry now. I'll carry the coconuts." We came to more coconut trees, and the dog, Turk, ran in front of us. We heard cries of pain and angry cries from the monkeys up in the trees. We saw that Turk had one of the monkeys in his mouth. Fritz ran to save it, but it was too late. The monkey was dead. Its baby wasn't far away. It was in the grass, crying out in fear. Then a very strange thing happened. The baby monkey jumped onto Fritz's back and held onto his hair. "Take it off! Take it off!" cried Fritz. I laughed. "It's lost its mother, and so you've become its father." "Yes, it's very similar to its new father." I carefully took the monkey off Fritz's back and held it in my arms. "What shall we do with it?" I asked. "Can I take it home?" Cried Fritz. "I'll get milk for it from the goats on the ship, and soon it will learn to find food for itself." We returned to the beach, and my wife and the 3 other boys ran to meet us. They were very pleased to see the little monkey. "What are those sticks?" they asked. "They're for you to eat," said Fritz, and he gave the sugar to his brothers. A very good meal was waiting for us at the tent. Different sorts of fish and a bird were cooking over the fire. Franz caught the fish while we were away. Ernest caught the bird. The fish was very nice, but we didn't like the taste of Ernest's bird. The sun was going down when we finished our meal, and we all went to bed. Fritz took the little monkey with him. Chapter 4. Back to the ship. When I woke up, I said to my wife, "I don't know what to do first. There are so many things that we need to do." "First," she said, "you must bring those animals from the ship. Go with Fritz. The rest of us will look for a place where we can build a home." I said to her, "We'll have to stay on the ship all night. Tell Ernest to climb up that high tree. He should tie a piece of cloth to the top. If there's any danger, pull the cloth down." "And you must put up a light on the ship," said my wife. "Then I'll know that you've got there safely." We reached the ship quite easily. The animals were in good health and had enough food. I remembered my wife's words and put up a light. Then we had some food and went to sleep. We woke up very early the next morning and found useful things for our life on the island. "We must have plenty of gunpowder," said Fritz. "Then we'll be safe if we meet wild animals or enemies later." "We must think of the present," I said. "What do we need now for these next few days or weeks? We must take more sailcloth because we need to make a home, and we must think of food. What food is there on the ship?" "I've seen a barrel of butter," said Fritz, "and there's the ship's bread and some meat and salt." "But what will we do when the bread's finished, and the butter will soon go bad?" "Let's think of the present," I said. "We have enough problems to worry about now. We can think about the future later. Perhaps a ship will come and take us away." But I was wrong. It's always a good idea to prepare for the future. We didn't know that at the time, so we made some silly mistakes. We didn't take back things that we needed later. It was a slow job getting all these things together, so we had to spend a second night on the ship. We woke up late the next morning. "Now, Fritz," I said as we sat at breakfast, "how can we take these animals to the land?" "We can't put them in the boat," he said. "They're too heavy." "Can we make another boat?" "No, the animals are too big. What can we do? The pig can swim, but the goats and the donkey can't swim so far." "No," I said. "We can't make a boat that's big enough. There are a lot of barrels on the ship, enough for a bigger boat, but we haven't got time to make one." "Barrels!" cried Fritz. "Let's make a boat for each animal. Let's tie barrels to the animals. The barrels will hold them up above the water when we pull them behind the boat." "That's possible," I said. "Let's try first with one animal and see." We tied a barrel to each side of a sheep and put it into the sea. It went down and down, then finally I saw its head above the water, and it began to swim. When it was tired, it stopped swimming. It stayed there, held up by the barrels. Fritz jumped into the sea and tied a rope to the sheep, and we pulled it back into the ship. We worked very hard, and for a time the job seemed impossible. The pig and the donkey were the most difficult. "Perhaps we should leave them," said Fritz. "We need the goats more than the other animals." We tied barrels to the goats, and then tried again with the pig and the donkey. The donkey seemed to understand, but the pig gave us a lot of trouble. "The pig's very fat," said Fritz, "and pigs are good swimmers. Perhaps its fat will keep it up in the water." So we didn't tie barrels to the pig. At last we got all the animals into the water. Then we climbed into the boat and put up the sail. There was a strong wind, and we soon reached the land. I cut the barrels from the animals, and they came up onto the beach. They were glad to be on land again. My wife and the boys came running. My wife was surprised to see all the animals, even the pig, safe on the land. "How did you think of using the barrels?" she asked. "I didn't think of it," I answered. This was Fritz's plan, not mine. Chapter 5. A New Place. "What did you do, my dear, while Fritz and I were on the ship?" I asked. "I found a place for our new home," said my wife. "It was impossible to stay in the tent because it was so hot, and there are no trees here that we can sit under. So Ernest and Jack took their guns, and we took enough food with us for the day. The dogs came too. We came to a river and crossed it on stones. Then we walked up to higher ground. From there I could see a small group of 10 or 12 trees. They were the biggest trees that I've ever seen. We stopped and ate our lunch there. It seemed to me to be the perfect place to live. Now you know my story. I went to look for a new place to live, and I found one. Promise me that we'll go there tomorrow. We'll make a home for ourselves in one of those big trees." "What?" I said, laughing. "In a tree house. We can live under a tree, but how can we get up into the tree? Fly? You can laugh if you want to, but I'm sure that we can build a small hut in the branches. We'll think of a way to get up there." "Right," I said. "We'll all go and see the place tomorrow. Then we'll think about what we can do." During the night, I thought about our conversation. Then, as we sat at breakfast the next day, I said, "Yes, we'll move to the place that you saw on the other side of the river." I turned to the boys and said, "Now, what's the first thing that we must do?" "I know," said Jack. "We must move the tent there, and then take all our things and the animals. What do you think, Fritz?" "The place is on the other side of the river." Mother, Ernest, Jack, and Franz went across on stones. But the donkey and pig can't cross on those stones, and we can't carry our things across the water. We must build a bridge. That's the first thing, isn't it?" "No," said Ernest. "First, we must go out to the ship and bring back wood for the bridge." "We don't have to do that," said Jack. "There was a lot of wood on the beach where that shellfish caught me. It's come from other ships, and there will be more there now." "Good boy," I said. "Let's see what we can find." Jack was right. We found plenty of wood. We tied together the big pieces which were useful to us. We pulled them to the mouth of the river. Then we got the donkey, and with its help, we pulled the pieces of wood up the river. Finally, they were at the place where we wanted to build our bridge. It wasn't easy, but we put 3 long pieces across the river. Then we nailed more wood across them. It was very hard work, and we all slept well that night. The next morning we got up early and began preparing for our journey. We put our pots, food, and smaller things into bags and hung them on each side of the donkey. We put little bags on the goats, but the pig refused to carry anything. Franz sat on the back of the donkey so it could not run away. The boys and I carried the other things that we needed for the first few days in our new home. When we were all ready, my wife said, "We can't leave the chickens here. If we leave them, we'll lose them all." Fritz and Ernest tried to catch the chickens, but it was impossible. They ran away. "I'll show you how to do it," my wife said. She threw a little corn on the ground, and all the chickens ran to it. When she threw some more inside the tent, they all went inside. Then, while they were eating, she closed the tent. "Now, Jack, you go into the tent, catch the birds, and pass them out to us. We'll tie their legs and put them in 2 barrels on the donkey's back." At last, we were ready to start. We put our other things inside the tent and closed it carefully. Fritz and my wife went in front. Next came the donkey with Franz on its back, then Jack with the goats. The monkey rode on the goat that gave him his milk. After him came Ernest and the sheep, and I came last. The dogs helped us to keep all the animals in line. The pig did not want to come with us, so we left it behind. But when it saw us leaving, it came running after us. When we reached the bridge, it was there too. We crossed the bridge very carefully. I was worried about the weight of the donkey, so I went first. The bridge was all right, so the donkey went next. Then the rest followed, but not the pig. Oh no, the pig refused to go on the bridge. We tried everything but without success. Then, when we were all on the other side, the pig swam across. It followed us, so we reached the place where we wanted to make our new home. "These are wonderful trees," said Fritz. "They're so tall." "Yes," I said. "I didn't think they were as big as this. This is an excellent place. If we can make a house in one of these trees, we'll be safe from wild animals." We tied up the animals so they couldn't escape, but not the pig. The pig lay down and slept. We freed the chickens, and my wife started a fire and cooked a meal for us. Chapter 6. The Rope Ladder. After the meal, I said, "We must sleep on the ground tonight. I can't see how we can get up into a tree this evening." Then I went to the beach with Fritz and Ernest. We looked for the things that we needed for a ladder. The beach was covered with pieces of wood of all sizes, carried there from ships by the sea. "It'll be difficult to make a ladder out of these pieces of wood," said Fritz, "and it'll be very heavy." "Look at those tall, thick plants there," cried Ernest. "They're what we need. Bamboo." I cut some bamboo into pieces about 6 feet long. Then I tied them together so I could carry them. Then I cut some straight sticks. "I can make a bow with this bamboo," I said, "and arrows from these sticks." We went back to the biggest tree carrying the bamboo. We put it on the ground. "That branch is about 30 feet high," I said. "We've got more than 60 feet of thick rope and a lot of thin rope. Now we'll put 2 long pieces of rope on the ground, and we'll cut pieces of bamboo 1.5 feet long. Fritz, you cut the pieces. Ernest will help me with the rope." So we began to work. "Now," I said, "we must tie pieces of bamboo across the ropes to make steps. Then we'll have a rope ladder." We worked very hard, and after a few hours a ladder was ready. Then I made a bow from another piece of bamboo. "Ernest," I said, "make arrows from these sticks. Put a big nail in one end." "Oh," cried Jack, "a bow and arrows. What are you going to do with them? I want to play with them. I'm not making a toy, Jack. I'm going to shoot with this. But soon you'll all have bows and arrows because we must be careful with our gunpowder. When we've used this gunpowder, we won't be able to get any more. And if there are dangerous men on the island, we'll need our gunpowder. When the bow and arrows were ready, I tied a long piece of thin rope to an arrow and shot the arrow up over the branch. It came down on the other side, carrying the thin rope with it. "Ah," said Ernest. He always understood things quickly. "You'll tie the rope ladder to this thin rope and pull it up onto the branch. Then you'll hold it there while someone ties it to the branch." "Yes," I said. "You climb up there. You're smaller than Fritz, and I don't think Jack can tie the ladder well enough." Soon the ladder was tied to the branch. "That's a good day's work," I said. "Now we must tie up the animals and we'll sleep at the foot of the tree. Tomorrow we'll begin to build our tree house." "Look," said Jack. "The chickens are on our rope ladder." I looked. Each chicken was sitting on a step. They were already very comfortable. I lit a big fire to keep away dangerous animals. Then I decided to stay awake and watch. Chapter 7. The Treehouse. I was worried at first. I didn't feel that we were in a very safe place. I heard a strange sound. No, it was only the movement of the trees. The fire was getting low. What were those shadows? Was that a wild animal moving nearer, nearer? I got up and put more wood on the fire. At last, I felt safer and went to sleep. It was light when I woke up. All the others were already awake. We had breakfast and then we started work again. My wife milked the goats. Then she went down to the beach with Ernest, Jack, Franz, and the donkey to get wood for the tree house. Fritz and I climbed up the ladder into the tree and planned our new home. "These branches," I said, "are thick and close together, and they come straight out from the tree. The floor of the house can be here, and the tree will be one of the walls." Fritz looked up and said, "Those higher branches will hold up the roof." "But what sort of roof?" "We'll put a sail over the branches and bring it down to the floor on two sides." That, as you will hear later, was a great mistake. I was very stupid, but at the time, Fritz and I were very pleased with our simple plans. "This fourth side," I said, "will be open. We can look out from there. Perhaps we'll make a place where we can sit outside in the daytime." "It will be a beautiful house," said Fritz. Then my wife and Ernest arrived. The donkey was pulling a lot of wood behind it. More wood was tied on its back, and Franz was sitting on top of that. They left the wood and went back for more. "How shall we get it up here?" said Fritz. "Shall I carry it up the ladder?" "No, we must pull it up. Now where did I see? Yes, I remember. It was in Ernest's box of tools." Fritz found the little wheel. We tied it to a branch and pulled up the pieces of wood. Then I started to make the floor. When evening came, the floor was finished. We hung our sailcloth over the higher branches and nailed it down to the floor on two sides. On the fourth side, we could see across the country around us, and plenty of air could come into the house. "There," I said. Our house is finished." Then I saw that there were more pieces of wood. "We'll make a table and some chairs from these tomorrow. Tonight we'll sleep in our new house." The 3 older boys quickly went up the ladder, carrying everything for their beds. My wife was afraid of the ladder, but she reached the top safely. Then I took Franz on my back. I untied the ladder from the posts in the ground, climbed up, and pulled the ladder up after me. "Now we're safe in our treehouse," said Jack. "Nothing can climb up here." "Oh," cried Fritz. "Where's the monkey?" "There," said Ernest, pointing to Fritz's bed. "A monkey can climb up anywhere." I kept my gun by my side. I was still not sure that the animals below were safe, but the night passed quietly. Chapter 8. Back to the tent. After breakfast, Fritz and I started to make a table. Suddenly we heard a loud bang, and a small bird fell almost at our feet. "That was a good shot," said Ernest, picking it up. He was very proud. "It wasn't good," I said. "We can't use our gunpowder like that. We can use the guns to shoot large animals for food, but for birds and small animals, we must use bows and arrows. Look at the bow and arrow that I've made, Ernest. Try to make better ones and learn to use them." When midday came, we put some barrels around the new table. We were ready to eat our first meal at it. "Where are Ernest and Jack?" asked my wife. "Let's start. If they come late, they won't have any lunch." "Maybe something has happened to them," said my wife. "I can't eat if they're not here." We waited. "I'm sure nothing has happened to them," I said at last. "They're young and silly and don't notice the time. Put the food on the table." Then Ernest and Jack arrived carrying bows and arrows. "Look," said Jack. Before I could speak, he held out 2 very small birds. We shot them with our bows and arrows. "I'm very pleased about that, but I'm angry because you're late. Your mother's been worried about you. Sit down and eat your lunch." We only had meat and a little bread for lunch. The bread was very hard. The meat was an animal that I shot the day before. "I left some things at the tent," said my wife. "If we get them, I can give you better meals." We left and walked towards the beach. The dogs went in front. This time the little monkey was riding on Turk's back. Then came Fritz, Ernest, and Jack with their bows and arrows. My wife, Franz, and I came last. There was still a lot of wood on the beach, and I noticed 2 long pieces just the same shape. Their ends were turned up. Now where, I thought, have I seen pieces of wood shaped like that? Ah, I remember. In Switzerland, of course. We reached the tent and found everything in the same place as before. Everyone looked for the things that they wanted. Fritz got some gunpowder while I found the butter. My wife pointed to a bag that I remembered putting into our boat. "What is it?" I asked. "Ah," she said. "That's what I wanted for our lunch. Potatoes." "There are only enough for 1 meal," I said. "But if we plant them, we'll have plenty next year, enough for all our meals." Jack was listening to this. "We can eat these potatoes, and then we can find wild potatoes," he said. "You found sugar and coconuts." "No, Jack. Wild potatoes grow on the top of high mountains, and they're very small and not very good to eat. These potatoes are different from wild ones. We must make a garden and grow potatoes in it." "But what can we eat now?" asked Jack. "I'll see what I can find," I answered. "Until our garden's ready, there are some wild plants that we can use." Next, Fritz and I went to get salt. The seawater dried on the rocks and left salt behind. We were able to get enough to give our food some taste, but we were stupid not to take more than that. Chapter 9. The Sledge. Later in bed, I thought, that barrel of butter was very heavy. We must find a way to carry heavy things. I thought about our animals tied up at the foot of the tree at night. They weren't safe. We must make huts for them. We needed wood for this, but more than we used for the floor of our house. We also needed bamboo. The donkey couldn't carry so much, so we must make a sledge. Those 2 pieces of wood on the beach were just the right shape for the bottom of a sledge. Early in the morning, Ernest and I climbed quietly down the ladder. I took some tools, nails, and a piece of light rope. We found the 2 pieces of wood and nailed them together with smaller pieces. Then we put a lot of bamboo and wood across the top. I tied a rope on the front, and we pulled the sledge back along the beach. It moved very easily across the sand. When we were finishing our breakfast, we heard a loud noise from the chickens. We all ran to them. "It's the monkey!" cried Ernest. "He's running after them." Then we saw the monkey hiding behind a tree. He was eating an egg. The monkey ran away to another tree, and Ernest ran after him. Soon Ernest came back with 4 more eggs. My wife went and looked in the grass. "One of the chickens is sitting on her eggs," she said. "Soon we'll have some little ones. We must make a safe place for the chickens. Then we can keep the monkey away from them." After lunch, Ernest and I went out again with the donkey. The donkey pulled the sledge to the beach. We put more wood and bamboo on the sledge, and then I looked at the sky. "We must go home," I said. "There are clouds in the sky, and the wind is getting stronger." Then I looked at the place where the ship was still on the rocks. Another storm could carry the rest of it away. We must make one more journey to the ship before it breaks into pieces. Why was I so stupid on our last journey? We brought back the animals, butter, salt, meat, bedclothes, gunpowder, and some books, but we knew then that we were on the island for a long time, a year, 2 years, perhaps for the rest of our lives. Why didn't I think of other more important things? Chapter 10. A Second Journey to the Ship. The next morning, Fritz and I got up very early. We went to look at our boat. It was in good condition, but it didn't have a sail. That was now the treehouse roof. "I think," said Fritz, "that we can use long, flat pieces of wood as paddles." "Yes," I said, "but we must get another sail from the ship. The boat will be very heavy with everything in it. There's still a strong wind. We'll run back home and tell the others we'll go now and then spend the night on the ship." We went quickly and told them our plans. My wife said, "We'll meet you with the sledge when you come back. Be careful." We reached the ship without great problems. "Now, Fritz, what do we really need?" "I can only think of one very small thing," he answered. "What's that?" I want something to catch big fish. Yes, I said, but we can't eat fish and meat every day. No, he answered, we must have bread and fruit and green vegetables. Do you remember Mr. Wilkins on the ship? He was moving to a new home. I'll see if I can find his tools. You find a fishing line. Yes, said Fritz. I remember watching one of the officers when he was fishing over the side of the boat. I know which room was his. I'll look there. I went below and found some gardening tools. I also found some seeds. That's lucky, I thought. Now we'll have lots of different vegetables to eat. Fritz came back with his arms full. I remember, I said to Fritz, that Mr. Wilkins was bringing a light plow with him. Shall I take the plow to the island? What will pull it? Asked Fritz. I don't think the donkey can pull a plow. No, I answered. No, you're right, but it isn't very big. We'll take it. Perhaps we can use it. We slept on the ship that night. The next day was windier and the sky looked stormy. We put a good sail on our boat and started back towards the land. Perhaps, said Fritz, we can catch a fish on the way back to the land. He put a fishing line over the side and pulled it through the water. Suddenly we felt something on the line. It was very strong and pulled the boat back towards the open sea. The fish will carry us away, cried Fritz. We must cut the line. No, no, cried Fritz. Let's wait. Just then, the wind began, and it pushed the boat towards the land. It became stronger and stronger, and we moved faster and faster through the water. The boat was thrown up onto the beach and broke into pieces. My wife and the boys were waiting for us. We quickly took our things off the boat and put them on the sledge. There, that's all, I said. No, answered Fritz. Let's see if the fish is still with us. He went into the water. Yes, it's still here. It's dead. So we carried the big fish onto the beach and put it on the sledge. This will give us food for days, I said. If it doesn't go bad, we must put it in salt. But now, said Ernest, we haven't got a boat. What should we do? We'll take the barrels that we used for the boat, I said. They'll be very useful for food and other things. Ernest, you walk along the beach. I think the sea threw one of the ship's boats out of the water. There I was right. There was a boat. It was badly broken, but we were able to mend it. We had some of the fish for supper, and it tasted very nice. Then my wife kept some for our meals the next day and put the rest into a barrel with salt. After our meal, we sat around the fire. We talked about the things that we had to do in the next few days. You must make a hut for the tools and other large things, said my wife. You can't carry those tools up and down into our house. Yes, I said, and we must also make some huts for the animals. We won't need many huts, said Ernest.